In May 2012, Cyberpunk 2077 was announced. The following year, a very early trailer was released in January. People were excited, intrigued. The era of pre-orders and overly trusting consumers. And then it was more or less complete radio silence until 2018. Games have gotten bigger, much bigger. Promises have gotten more hollow, gamers have become more skeptical, and then at E3 2018, we finally got a new trailer. Then, just the next year, E3 2019, we got another one. Not only that, but they told us that it would come out for PS4 and Xbox One in April of next year? 2020? Despite the market not being quite what it was 8 years ago, people were excited. They couldn't help themselves. Come March 2020, just 1 month out from the announced release, nothing important or life-changing was happening in the world. However, the game was pushed back by 5 months to mid-September, then soon after delayed again to the 19th of November, which we were soon to learn was just a week after the release of 9th generation consoles. Soon before that third release date, CD Projekt Red pushed back Cyberpunk one last time to the 10th of December, just 8 days after my birthday actually. I thought, yeah, this looks cool. I'll pre-order this for myself, I'm stuck in the house, it's coming out really soon, so it'll give me something to do. And thus marked the final time I would pre-order a game. Launch day, December 10th, 2020. The anticipation was unmatched. On the very first day, the game exceeded 1 million concurrent viewers on Twitch. Widely considered one of the most disastrous launches in video game history, thousands, no, millions watched over the following days as NPCs phased through walls and floors, the playable character T-posing half naked while driving through the streets, and vehicles simply raining from the sky in a cataclysmic series of events. NPCs fused together. Assets gained a mind of their own, fulfilling their dreams of being a playable character. Random obstructions spawned out of nowhere, CD Projekt Red finally delivering on their promise of flying cars. The list was endless. It was December 10th, 2020, and Cyberpunk 2077 was nearly unplayable. Just don't forget, the game is fixed. As I'm sure you're very aware at this point, Cyberpunk has had a very turbulent development since its initial conception. However, it's gone through a lot of changes in the many years since that time, so what exactly went wrong? Well, for starters, it was a ridiculously ambitious concept from the very beginning. Having spent most of the time the company's been around on the Witcher titles, switching over to make an enormous first-person RPG with a wildly different setting was an utterly insane idea. Before the game even came out, there were a number of controversies regarding many different aspects of the game, from the rival gangs present in Night City all the way to political issues regarding gender and the inclusion of microtransactions, which actually aren't even present in the game at all. At some point along that road, there was also some issues with a game journalist having a seizure during one of the demos, so that wasn't a good look either. Even after all of the delays, the devs were accused of releasing the game far too early with its many bugs and absolutely abhorrent past-generation console performance. With the studio's reputation already in the garbage, it was revealed in early 2021 that the company had been hacked, and not only had the hacker threatened to sell major information about the company, but allegedly they actually did. With plenty of problems to deal with, CD Projekt Red did end up releasing a content roadmap for the game around the same time, commenting that they were fully committed to making Cyberpunk a long-term success. Which brings us to today, the tail end of 2023. Nearly 3 years have passed since the Cyberpunk disaster of 2020. The game was in development for almost 9 years, and it still took them an extra 2 to finish the product. But was it worth it? Short answer, yes. I come to you with a heavy heart and regretful intentions to say that, yeah, Cyberpunk 2077 is genuinely amazing. Before we really get into it, let me quickly break down the structure of this video for you. First, we're going to talk about the technical state of the game, which is this section, since that's largely what the discussion has been about up until now. And then we'll discuss the story with minor spoilers and the gameplay of Cyberpunk. Then we'll talk about the newly released DLC and all the additions that came with it. If there are any sections that you'd like to see over others, I will have chapters on to make that easier for you. So first, let's talk about the game's technical state. I had very few problems while playing through the game. In the 40-something hours it took me to finish the DLC's story, as well as one ending of the game's main story, I only experienced one crash, and the game autosaves so frequently that I didn't even lose any progress whatsoever. Beyond that though, nothing too serious. I only experienced some minor bugs at points, like NPCs simply falling through the floor or flying away, dumb shit like that, but never anything game-breaking and never during any tense story moments. It's all stuff that you'd see in most open world games, honestly. Not that it's necessarily an excuse given how long this game has been in development, but it is very easy for things to go unnoticed during development of such a ridiculously large game. I don't necessarily have a high-end PC, I'll throw my specs up on the screen now, and to be entirely honest, if you have a PC build with older parts than mine, I would not recommend trying to play this game if you want it to look that great. But obviously check the recommended specs if you're playing on Steam. Performance is apparently very good on next-gen consoles, so the PS5 and Xbox Series X, but I can't personally vouch for either of those. I played the game on medium settings, and honestly it looked really good for medium settings, and I was typically getting between 60 and 65 frames out in the open world, around 50 to 60 when driving, because you're loading a bunch of stuff in, and typically 70 to 90 in smaller closed-off spaces, which you will spend a surprising amount of time in, which we'll talk about later. I never personally had an issue with how the game was running because it was far more than playable, and I had the option to lower the settings if I wanted to, with the absurd amount of graphical options that you can change around to fine-tune your experience. As always, you don't have to listen to me here, but it's just some stuff to keep in mind. Let's move on to the base game. So first off, we're going to talk about the base game and the gameplay. Fair warning, there will be minor spoilers, but nothing too crazy. Upon starting the game, you'll create your character, V. There's a lot of customization in this game, but there are a couple of things that bothered me a little bit. For one, I wish there was a sort of gallery for things like hairstyles rather than just having to scroll through them all. That was a really silly thing not to include, I think, but it's whatever. I also wish you had more voice options since there is just one male and one female voice option. Otherwise, this customization is great, and it's enhanced even more by the ridiculous amount of clothing options that you'll find throughout the game. Once you create your character, you'll also have to choose between a couple of different life paths, which are basically just your character's background. You don't get a whole lot of really specific options, you're pretty much just choosing from 3 different paths. Corpo, Street Kid, and Nomad, and it doesn't do much other than open some dialogue options at various points throughout the game. This next part could be considered a fairly major spoiler, but it is just the setup for the narrative, so if you don't want to hear this, you can skip to this timecode on the screen. The basic setup for the story goes like this. After getting yourself into some trouble, you find yourself in a position to pull off a very high-profile heist. This is your ticket to fame and fortune, so against all odds you take this job. As expected, not everything goes according to plan, tragedy strikes, and after being killed, you are more or less revived by the very object you were contracted to steal, a chip you implanted in your head with the consciousness of infamous rocker boy and terrorist Johnny Silverhand. The chip was programmed to essentially give control of a lifeless body to Johnny, but your character is now back alive as well. Now, essentially 2 people living in one body, you must find a way to work with Johnny in order to remove him from your head before he assimilates into your body and overwrites your consciousness. That's as far as I'll go with the actual story details, but it is only a very early portion of the story. Throughout your time in the main storyline, you'll meet many characters, go on a variety of insane heist. Sorry guys, deadlines were tight, so I'm gonna have to call it right here. I know the video is unfinished, but I figured it was better to just put out something even if it was a little rough around the edges. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.
After facing backlash earlier this week for releasing an unfinished video, famed YouTube star Connor Murray has released the following statement.
Dear gamers, first of all, I would like to start by apologizing to you for not seeing the video through to its completion. I understand how the false promise of a full— Wait, there it is. Now the video is finished, actually. And learn the ins and outs of Night City's seedy criminal and corporate underworld. To be entirely honest, I found the story to be really incredible, which I wasn't expecting given how no one talked about that when the game actually came out. There are several endings, even more added by the new DLC, and each one is such a satisfying conclusion to V's story, yet it also makes you want to experience the other endings. Prior to the game's launch, and even at the beginning, there does seem to be a large emphasis on the whole be whoever you want, carve your own path idea, but a lot of the decisions you make don't really have a whole lot of impact. Sure, some dialogue choices may change how some characters view you, or how you view other characters, and some choices may give you things like a new vehicle, or the option to get a new weapon, but there are only 5 core decisions in the whole game that actually make a difference in the overall story. 5 is probably an exaggeration, either too high or too low. It honestly could go either way. Personally, I wasn't super bothered by the lack of impact my dialogue options had, but again, it is just something to keep in mind. Night City's design is also amazing, between the towering corporate skyscrapers to the mega buildings filled with apartments, restaurants, gun shops, you name it. The world design does such an impressive job of portraying the stripes of Night City as well as its dystopian aspects and many struggling citizens. I'd say the biggest thing this game has going for it though is, ironically, its missions, many of which are fairly linear. Sure, a lot of them take place in the open world, but a lot of them also take place in a singular building or snaking tunnels, all of which are so rich with detail that they contain their very own stories you can extrapolate if you want to look into it enough. From recurring characters and voice logs to political figures and criminals almost akin to urban legends, there's so much lore and things to just discover and know about the world that I truly could go on for hours. There are also many districts with their own distinctions from one another, being controlled by different gangs and therefore having unique events and personalities, all while being a functioning piece of the Night City ecosystem. Without further ado though, it's going to be pretty hard to talk about the combat and other gameplay elements without bringing up the game's recent changes with its DLC, Phantom Liberty. Phantom Liberty released just a couple of weeks ago along with an enormous update dubbed Cyberpunk 2.0. This update overhauled just about every major system in the base game, namely the character building system. While this wasn't entirely absent from the game before, 2.0 has pretty much entirely reworked the perk tree with a lot more options and fine-tuning available to you. This allows you to be more precise with exactly what type of character you want to craft, while also giving you so many points that you can play around with other builds simultaneously, even if your core build isn't necessarily made for it. With the DLC, it opens up a whole new perk tree that gives specific upgrades to certain combat options, like optical camo, mantis blades, and more, while not being quite as overwhelming as the base skill tree. Along with all this, Cyberware, the futuristic technology-based body augmentations, has been enhanced with new perks, side effects, and overall an increase in options. It is now tied to armor in order to give even more build customization to the player. The guns are fun, the melee is fun now, and the movement is fun too. Everything is just such a damn good time. Night City's most honorable police force has also been reprogrammed and has a bunch of new interactions with the player, on top of some improvements to their AI and general presence in the world. MaxTac, basically the SWAT of Cyberpunk, also has gotten a bunch of improvements in this update, now truly committing to being the chromed up freaks they always should have been. There are also a bunch of other changes, but those are the big ones. There will be links to various websites I used for research, as well as a couple about the changes made in the description. That's just the free update though. Phantom Liberty itself is a whole different beast. The DLC comes with a pretty large map expansion and a ridiculously compelling storyline rivaling the main one already in the game. Phantom Liberty's story takes place during the main story, so once you reach a certain point in the main storyline, you can then play through Phantom Liberty. It utilizes a completely new area in Night City, Dogtown, which was previously blocked off to the player due to insane crime rates and pretty much its own self-contained government. It also introduces a huge cast of new characters, one of which, Idris Elba's character, is truly one of my favorites in the entire game. While the main story sees themes of corporate greed and corruption, Phantom Liberty takes a step away from that and focuses on the political aspects of the cyberpunk world. That's not to say it's free of action-packed moments though. I'm going to briefly discuss the opening moments of Phantom Liberty, so if you don't want any spoilers whatsoever, skip to this timecode if you want to avoid that. After being summoned to Dogtown by a mysterious woman named Songbird, she offers to help you with your Johnny problem in exchange for help as well. It is shortly revealed that Songbird is actually a federal agent of NUSA, which is the new United States of America. Working closely with the president when their aircraft is shot down over Dogtown, they crash land and you have to save the president and Songbird from Dogtown's military forces directed by its charismatic leader, General Kurt Hansen. From this point forward, you work with the president to get her to safety and out of Dogtown, at which point you'll find yourself accompanied by a NUSA sleeper agent named Solomon Reed to uncover a conspiracy against the government. That's pretty much the whole first 3 to 4 hours of Phantom Liberty, which is literally just the tip of the iceberg. I left some stuff out as well, so there'll still be a couple of fun surprises when you get around to playing that opening section for yourself. Despite the base game certainly being far from a light-hearted adventure, Phantom Liberty's spy thriller story has an even darker tone with some really intense moments and, like the base game, genuinely impactful exchanges with characters. The motion capture work they've done with the actors here is honestly so impressive. Especially when you're having these personal one-on-ones with other characters, so much emotion is conveyed through their expressions and voice performances that it's honestly so believable and at most times really carries the story, which does go for the base game as well. I literally just beat it and I want to play it again. Like the main story, Phantom Liberty also has several endings, 4 different ones I believe. Much like the main quest, the endings are all a satisfying conclusion to Phantom Liberty's characters and actually leave you wanting more, but in the good way. Like a lot of other missions in the game, many of the DLC takes place in closed-off spaces rather than out in the open world. Not all of them, but many of them. These are among the best parts of the game as far as I'm concerned, and it also makes me wonder just how incredible a linear Cyberpunk title would be, but of course then you wouldn't get the strange, immersive, living and breathing Night City. The DLC also adds a slew of new weapons and vehicles to mess around with as well, and a tremendous amount of side content with new jobs and random events and such. So, is it worth playing now? Yes, it absolutely is. Honestly, it was worth playing a while ago, but now it's better than ever. There's so much content in this game now that it's really hard not to recommend it. Even if you do skip out on the side content, which of course I don't recommend, there's still just so much to do even in the base story. I don't feel the need to tell you the DLC improves it tenfold, it does, but I'm fairly confident that at some point during the base game you'll be convinced to play it all on your own anyway. Cyberpunk's launch might have been really rough. I'm talking catastrophically, biblically bad. However, after playing it in its current state, I can pretty sincerely say that this will probably go down as one of my favorite single-player games of all time. With that being said, you don't want to miss out on Cyberpunk this time around. Thank you guys so much for watching this far. If you'd like to support me, the best way to do so as of right now is to subscribe, like, and drop a comment below, and at that point, it's pretty much out of your hands. With that being said though, I do hope you enjoyed and maybe even are picking up Cyberpunk right now, but who knows. Anyways, I will catch you guys in the next one.